Kick us off. All right, Regina, feel free to take it away.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Regina Vitolo, and I'm representing ACRL's Student Learning and Information Literacy Committee's Professional Development team. Thank you for joining us for the webinar today. Our goal for these webinars is to bring our colleagues together to discuss topics and issues of broad interest and importance to the academic and research library community and to learn from each other. We appreciate everyone joining us today, and just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Today's session is being recorded, and we will email the recording link shortly after the webinar. The recording will also be posted on ACRL's Student Learning and Information Literacy Committee's YouTube channel. You can use chat to comment and ask questions throughout the webinar, and we will have time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. Closed captioning is available, and you can click on the show captions at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to enable captions. Today's webinar is Open Educational Resources and Information Literacy Connections, incorporating students in OER advocacy and adoption efforts. During the session, librarians and student advocates will share practical approaches to mentorship, inclusive hiring, and authentic collaboration that position students as leaders and change agents in the open education movement. Our UTA group will present first for the first 20 minutes of our presentation, and they will go through a series of questions. And you can type any questions you have during their presentation into the chat box. And then the second 20 minutes of our webinar, we will hear from the McMaster University speakers, and they will share their presentation slides as well. The last 15 minutes, again, will be reserved for Q&A. So please remember, if you have questions throughout, type them in that chat box or the Q&A box. I'd like to thank our presenters for being here with us today. I will introduce them first with our University of Texas Arlington group. We have Megan Zara, and we also have Lainey Taylor Allen. And they will tell us a little bit more about themselves once we start with the presentation. And I'd also like to welcome and thank Katie Harding from McMaster University, Rebecca Beckley, student OER advocate from McMaster University, and Kiana Lowe's, student OER advocate from McMaster University. And please, if I messed up anyone's name, feel free to repeat it in introductions, but we will go ahead and get started with our UTA group.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and pull up our presentation here. We're so excited to be here and share with you guys. When we saw this opportunity, we knew we had some stuff to share with you. So I am Megan Zara. I'm the Open Educational Resources Librarian here at UTA. Lainey, I'll let you share your role.
Hello, I'm Lainey. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Learning Resources Librarian at UTA. And we like to call ourselves the Affordability Dream Team.
Yes. So here at UTA, we see affordability as a spectrum. So it's not just all OER or nothing. We have a lot of people who are a little scared to jump all the way into OER. So our affordability spectrum kind of helps people see where they're at and gives them a place to move forward. Our spectrum goes from commercial textbooks, course reserves and library. Inclusive access is actually next, then course reserves and library services, then just free resources, and then OER. Lainey, do you have anything else to say about our affordability spectrum? Awesome. So we have 3 projects that we wanted to share with you guys today that kind of answers the questions for this webinar. So we're going to give you an overview of the 3 projects, and then we're going to go through and answer some questions about these projects. Lainey?
Megan, I think we are showing the presenter's version of the PowerPoint rather than
This one?
just the screen. We can see the notes section.
Can you?
Yes.
Let me try to change it here. Thought I was just sharing one screen. Let's see. Stop
for the
share.
people that mentioned that.
View. It wants me to do that one. Let's see if that's better.
Yes. Okay.
Yay. Okay. Thank you. It looks the exact same from my end. So thank you for letting me know. All right. Now we'll move on. So the first project we wanted to share a little about was our OER graduate research assistant hiring. So this was actually my first time ever being charged with hiring someone. So I approached it a little different. I didn't come at it with just previous experience with hiring. I come from the public education world, K-12, and I'm a new OER librarian, new to the OER outreach. And as I've been learning, what I've really come to is that students are kind of the drivers, and we're just not seeing as many students drive the movement as I'd like to. So I really wanted to hire, not to fill a role as an OER helper, but to hire an advocate, somebody who might want to help lead and co-create our strategies rather than just help with what I decide to do. I've been a student, but I'm not a student now. So I really value the voices that they bring. My OER hiring process, I started with an application that had places for them to learn about OER so that if they didn't already know about it, they could actually get their foot in the door and learn about it. I had them choose some different readings to read through and then reflect. And I also had them consider their AI use. I told them in the application that they could absolutely use it if they wanted to, but they did need to disclose how they used it. Then I did group interviews. I took students, the ones I chose from that first round of assessments. I took those and invited some to a group interview, and we did these virtually and in small groups of about 3 to 5. And in those groups, I talked more in depth about the role, and I gave them a chance to talk about themselves and their passions outside of OER. And then I had them do an activity where I got to watch them communicate and tease out some OER ideas and problems and solutions they might come to. I got some feedback from them. Most of them really felt like the process was really good and they liked it. They felt inspired. Consistently, they wanted more time. So the next project we wanted to share about was, as a result, the GRA actually hired, one of the seeds was to create a OER or Open Education Student Advocacy Group. And so Lainey, do you want to talk about this one?
Yes, so based on the conversations, we've really built the idea that students we focused on programs that educate students. And through this process, we found a lot of students who asked, like, what could they do? What was the next step? So based on the GRA we hired, he created a student-led advocacy group that focuses on raising awareness for open materials, that builds the student voices and how they can take the next steps to reach out to faculty. As we know, faculty are very incentivized to engage with OER when they hear it's needed for their students. So right now, the group is led by our GRAs, as well as other students we've been able to gain through the process of those events focused on reaching out and educating students.
Absolutely. And one point I want to make here is that this group is absolutely not part of the GRA position. We support it, but they do not have to be a part of it. One of our GRAs currently, she just wasn't able to put the time in to do more than like consulting and giving her voice. And that was totally fine. So that's one thing that can be kind of fuzzy. We didn't create it, and we step back quite a bit and let the students drive that. And a lot of times I'm asking, how can we support you? What can we do to support the messaging y'all are putting out there and how you want to put it out there?
Yeah, we give them the context and the structure for how to educate, and they take the lead on what would be most useful to reaching. It's a peer-to-peer conversation that we serve as a support role.
Absolutely. And then the third project is our PR campaign's course collaboration.
Yes, so in this one, I want to highlight that in the world of open culture, it's really rooted in the concept of collaboration. When we're looking at different projects to build student advocates, we looked at this one specifically because it was a chance that allowed us to build OER into coursework. So what it was, our department served as a client for a public relations campaign course. So this is kind of like a capstone for our public relations majors. So we got to work with 21 students who launched a full-scale OER awareness campaign on our campus that developed messaging, conducted faculty surveys, and coordinated events over the course of a semester. The team was divided into specific groups, a planning committee, a creative, and a research group that each took on different parts of the campaign that identified our gaps in OER, the misconceptions, and brought fresh ideas that resonated with our students in a way that only students can.
Yeah, it was an incredible journey to watch them from novice. A lot of the students started and had never heard of OER. And then by the end, they were just these little experts who wished they had heard about OER before their senior year. So it just kind of showed us even more that we need to talk to students. And that's actually something that came out of an OSAG when our group talk was we want to really target undergraduates because we just don't feel like they know. We find that graduate students kind of have some understanding. They've heard open access. But it's those undergrad students that could really, really use the resources that just aren't aware. So we're working to target those beginner college people so they're having the resources all the way through.
Yes, it was actually great to see they became creators of open access materials. The QR code does link to the collection of resources they produced as a part of that course.
Yes.
So, more later.
Nice. Okay. So now we have our questions here. And we'll start with mentoring and student leadership. As a whole, we really found that just when the students are treated as co-creators from day one, the leadership just kind of naturally follows. In the hiring process, mentorship began before the job even started. I designed the application and interviews to be a learning experience. So it asked candidates to engage in open practices and reflect on their potential contributions with their personal skills. So this approach, I feel like it helped signal that we weren't just bringing someone in to help and fill a role, but that they were being invited to come in and help us shape the outreach that we were doing. In terms of OSAG, the student-led advocacy group, it wasn't our direction. It really came from a seed from one of the really authentic conversations that we had in those groups, those group interviews. Lainey, did you want to say something about the PR campaigns and mentorship?
Yes, I wanted to highlight that when it comes to mentoring students, students already have a lot of skills. When it comes to OER, we can talk about the benefits that OER brings to student education. It's really about utilizing student skills and finding a way for them to leverage that into like future career opportunities. So for the PR campaigns course, students were actually given this real world example. They put their degrees in action. They were able to apply their skills to something that ultimately benefited them. We know students get really excited about how they can benefit from OER, but they don't have the means to put it into application because it's the faculty who usually decide it. But this was one of the chances where students could put OER into action because they were able to shape and implement different programs on campus that were educational as well as making faculty members more aware about OER. So they were really able to shape the culture of OER on campus.
Yes, we're seeing a culture shift as we bring students in more. All right, so to let you know, for each of the questions, we have a slide with key takeaways. We are going to share the link to the slides, but in the interest of time, I won't go through all of the key takeaways, but I will show it and share it here. Really, like we said in the beginning, the co-creation kind of brings that leadership. They're not just a tangential part of the process, they are the process for us. So in terms of inclusive pathways, so we started rethinking processes that we were already doing, like hiring. When I came in, I had 2 GRAs that I inherited. They were great. And when they graduated, I was really sad. And I was thinking about what ways I can bring GRAs in to not only help them with their research and their passions and purpose, but to grow OER advocates naturally, authentically. Lainey?
Yeah, in the PR campaigns course, It was a chance to educate students, but also the students then took the steps to build things themselves. Students are able to engage in places that we might not be able to enter just because it's more of student spaces. But since they were there as self-advocates, they were able to, so for example, different student organizations, they were able to reach out to and tell them more about OER because they are members of those organizations. And students really, we found, are more likely to listen to fellow students than they are to like a librarian who comes in and tries to tell them things. So it's really that passion that students have and using those voices to do those peer-to-peer conversations, which are much more meaningful.
Absolutely. It's fun to talk to a student and give them that education. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this. And they just like have the passion already because of their lived experiences. Open is so for everyone. Everyone can find something that helps them in it. So our key takeaways are here. This is kind of the inclusive pathways. Anything can be outreach. We can create programs and workflows that are human-centered that can really drive our outreach and educate the people we're reaching. ACLR framework and info literacy.
Awesome. So many of the concepts in the ACRL framework naturally show up in the type of work that we've been discussing. Through OSAG, our students have been able to take on the responsibility of creating programs that directly engage with students. For example, they create an event about how to find research, but specifically research that focuses on open resources. Students are here to try and learn, engage information, but recontextualizing it in the sense of looking specifically for open gave them more knowledge about how to avoid those, paywalls that OER is one of the greatest benefits for OER. They get to experience their lived experiences as a launching point for exploring and producing knowledge. We talk to students all the time. They are experts in their own experience. We hear a lot of examples of students who share with us creative ways that they use to avoid purchasing textbooks. And that using that information really helped to shape our process going forward. We don't want students to do unethical ways of accessing material, but find ways to show them that this is an ethical way through the licensing of OER. The PR students created different questions. They did a research survey. I think the value of that the value of having the PR students create kind of this research survey that directly engaged with our faculty is it created a third-party participant. Sometimes faculty members might not want to ask us or answer our questions directly, or they frame it in a way that they're not going to be as harsh to our current practices. But allowing students to create that research survey, faculty members were more open and honest about what we were doing well, what we weren't, and what are some areas that we could grow into. So allowing them to become experts and engage with others on behalf of us really helped to promote the programming that we would later adopt and lead into.
I think one of the things that was really interesting that we found from their surveys was that while faculty do find the monetary incentives good, a lot of them love that. A heavy weight was on, the contextualization and customization of the course to make it their own. So that was interesting to hear. And when I talk to faculty, I hear them with OER discovering it. They're like, I'm just more excited about my topic now. So they're excited, the kids, I come from K-12, the students get excited. So our key takeaways there, and I know we're running close on time, so we'll move into here. So our student-led impact, really our focus here is that we don't drive what we do for students. We bring in students and ask them to help us drive what they need, what their experiences dictate that they need moving on and doing their educational journey. Lainey, did you have anything to share on this one? And we have like a minute left.
I think we might have covered it in other sections.
I think we did. Okay, so one of our last ones here, collaboration with faculty.
Yes, I think something that was very valuable is looking for your partners on campus. The PR campaigns course was so valuable for how we go forward with our programming and marketing. But that came about because of an advocate that was already pre-existing in our OER work. The faculty member who taught the course was already building an OER, so she had the contextual knowledge. And it was a class that was already being taught. So you don't have to start something from scratch. You can use things that are already existing there, use the skills of students, and find a way to allow them to show what they have learned over the course of their degree and put it into action. I think when we think of student success, we think of grades and graduation, but recontextualizing it and finding opportunities for them to prove that what they've learned prior to graduation. I know the students in the PR campaigns class are going back and showing the impact of their resources. They produced 20 different, no, sorry, they produced 14 different materials they licensed openly. And over the course of less than 6 months, they've had almost 350 downloads of those materials. So they're able to point to that for future employers and say, hey, look at the work that I have created as a student and the impact that is made in the field of OER.
Awesome. So we're at our time. Our biggest takeaways really is students don't need to be experts to join. They just need the invitation and to be asked. Ownership is the goal. We want them to take ownership in the outreach that we do. And then open practices can start before the project does. Thank you so much. Lainey, do you have anything else to say?
Yes, I wanted to say when it comes to like the advice for moving forward, we lead with the idea of there's a disability idea that is no conversations about us without us. And it really points to how programming is more effective when you bring in your key collaborators that you're trying to reach. And so that's why student voices are so important, because our whole goal is to support student success.
Great. Megan and Lainey, thank you so much for sharing all of the wonderful work you are doing with open educational resources and with students on your campus. It really is amazing and inspiring. And now we will move on to Katie, Rebecca, and Kiana from McMaster University. If you have any slides, you can go ahead and start sharing those. And again, any questions or comments you have, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will get to them during our Q&A, the last 15 minutes of the webinar. All right, I will let Katie take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. First off, can everybody see my slides okay? Are they coming through? Amazing, fantastic. Okay, great. Thank you all for having us. So we are coming to you from McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And we're going to do a quick round of introductions. So I'll start. My name is Katie Harding. I am a teaching and learning librarian at McMaster. And so my job is about 50-50 between support for STEM disciplines and support for OER, but across all disciplines, working with all of the different faculties here. And then I'll let Rebecca introduce herself first.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca, and I'm an incoming third-year student in the Honors Health Sciences program at McMaster, and I'm also one of the student OER advocates here with you today.
And Kiana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiana. I am a student OER advocate in the same position as Rebecca, and I'll be entering my 5th year of civil engineering and society in September.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you both. So what I want to start is by giving you all a little overview of what's been going on in OER at McMaster. So we have had an OER committee here campus-wide since 2017, so for quite some time. We have an OER grants program that funds adoption, adaptation, and creation of OER. We have a couple of services, the OER by Discipline Guide and our OER Finding Service, which are intended to support faculty and staff in identifying OER they can use. We provide support for OER tools like Pressbooks and H5P, and we offer workshops and Open Ed Week programming. And all of that stuff is great, but what you will notice is there's not a lot of student focus in any of it. We do have representatives from our student union on our OER committee, but otherwise a lot of what we've been doing in OER has been very focused on faculty and staff at our institution. However, we have had a lot more interest from our students union over the past few years. They are really interested in promoting open education, in lowering the costs of course materials here. And that sort of brings us to our partnership with the McMaster Students Union. So they have provided us with some funding over a couple of years for some programs dedicated to developing and promoting OER. So we've met with that group a few different times, and we had come up with a list of potential projects that we might work on to promote OER. And we agreed on the projects that were the most student focused and would get students really involved in what we're doing in our OER work. So the project we'll be talking about today is the Student OER Advocates, but I also wanted to mention a couple of the other projects we've got. So we have an OER project stream in our Student Partners program, basically allowing faculty and staff to apply for and receive small grants to hire students to work on OER projects. And we've also been doing a number of student-facing events in collaboration with our student union. So a few different things we've got on the go. And so for the OER Advocates program that we're going to talk about, the student union was providing us with feedback as we were developing that program. They also participated in the hiring process, which I will tell you more about in a moment. And after we had hired the OER Advocates, they joined some of our meetings and they were involved in some of our conversations about our OER work too. So it's been a really wonderful partnership we've had. So for the student OER advocate positions, this job was posted to our student job board in early December of 2024, which was right before final exams and actually was pretty atrocious timing. But what we did is we made sure that the posting went until just before the beginning of our winter semester. So that meant that we had a couple of weeks where students were not in courses or studying for exams, where they had some time that they could find and apply for these jobs. The MSU's AVP of University Affairs participated in the hiring process. So she was reviewing applications. She was in the interviews, conducting interviews with me, and she and I were making decisions about who we were going to hire, who was going to move on to get an interview, all of that stuff. So our student union was really involved in that as well. And then in our hiring process, we tried to make it as accessible as we could. So that meant offering flexible interview scheduling, so students could choose between, morning or afternoon or even evening interview times. We offered a choice of in-person or virtual interviews, and we made sure we were providing our interview questions in advance. And so in terms of things we were looking for communication skills, experience with advocacy, experience working alone and with a team, as well as just an interest in open education. So some students had worked with OER before, and some really hadn't, and that was okay as long as they were interested in learning. Okay, and so you've met Kiana and Rebecca, but I wanted to also highlight our two other OER advocates. So we had Nabia, who's in the top left here, who is a commerce student, and Anas, who is on the top right, who was a kinesiology student. So this was our team for winter semester. And so our goals of this program, we were working on increasing awareness of OER among students and faculty at Mac, and also in centering student voices and ideas in how we were promoting OER. Okay, and I think I'm turning things over to Rebecca now.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, so the student OER advocate position, what does the role entail? It entails a few different things. So first and foremost, it entailed just learning about open educational resources. Us students were working for a period of 10 weeks and came in with varying levels of experience with open educational resources. And the main goal was for us all to get very comfortable with them within those first few weeks, because we would, begin student engagement and advocacy pretty soon into the role. So with that, we received a plethora of readings and videos and just materials from Katie to kind of help get us familiar with open educational resources. And we were provided with different examples of OER services and OER promotion from different institutions as well. And another thing is that, or another goal for the role was just to develop strategies to promote open educational resources at McMaster. And we kind of had a general idea of this goal and what we wanted out of it. And we kind of worked together as a group to figure out how we might accomplish it. And then actually implemented these ideas through different engagement activities that we'll get to later. And again, we also wanted to implement education and outreach programs related to OER as well. So a lot to do with student advocacy and engagement. And the structure of this position was a 1 hour a week synchronous group meeting. And in those meetings, we kind of discuss what we were reading and watching and learning and just checking in on our various tasks. And those other 4 hours per week were just asynchronous work. And sometimes you'd be meeting in smaller groups if you were working with someone else on your kind of respective task for the week. But in total, it was about 5 hours a week per week. Yeah, so for learning and training, very similar to the goals mentioned before, generally just to introduce us to topics within open educational resources. And that included just what are open educational resources, information about textbook affordability, learning about copyright and open licensing, which was really important, and just the different OER programs and services at McMaster specifically, and just different student advocacy and OER initiatives that might have already existed at school. And with that, we met with a lot of MSU, or our student union representatives, and other campus partners. So like staff from like the Office of the Vice Provost of Teaching and Learning, and a staff from McMaster University Libraries Communications as well, just to kind of better support our understanding of the role and how we could engage with it as best as possible. So for our partnership process, we had weekly meetings that started in early February. And initially, we couldn't find a time that worked for everyone. So we had two separate OER advocate meetings on the same day, which wasn't really working. So over reading week, we were able to meet all together since classes were no longer an obstacle. And we realized how well things worked when the entire team was there at the same time. And we managed to find a time that worked for everyone in the coming weeks, which was Fridays from 9 to 10 a.m. And in those meetings, we would share and discuss the work we did during the week, any new ideas or upcoming events, and meet with library staff or other stakeholders to learn more about OER efforts at McMaster. And since we would work on our weekly tasks, which were often in teams of two, as I mentioned, remotely, it was essential to have an effective mode of communication with the entire team where we could share what we were working on prior to our Friday meetings, which is where our lovely Teams channel came in, as you can see on the slide. And we used it from the beginning, and we were able to ask each other questions and provide feedback and maintain communication during the week before our actual team meetings. And we also had a file section that you can also see on the slide where we'd upload our work for easy access for the entire team. And that way everyone could see what you were working on during the week and easily access it during our meetings when you're sharing the final result. And we'd also keep our meeting minutes in a folder in the file section as well for easy access. So these are just some key themes from our meeting discussions. The biggest one was just textbook affordability awareness. We'd often talk about rising textbook prices and how they're a major barrier to student success, and how us as students often sacrifice essentials to kind of afford these texts. And we also talked about how the kind of market is dominated by these kind of major textbook publishers. Another big point was advocacy for open educational resources, and just we recognize OERs as a solution to high costs and like accessibility gaps. But we also raised some concerns as well in terms of like advocacy, especially towards faculty. Like, you know, it might seem like we're giving more work to instructors, copyright issues, and maybe people might not understand how it works. And also the perceived quality of open educational resources is something we talked about a lot. You know, despite it being made by often being made by the same people who make those traditional textbooks, it may not be seen in the same way because they are free and open access. And also just a belief that McMaster and not just us as students should be making the effort to lead the change. And we talked about our practical ideas and our campaigns a lot. You know, we discussed what we'd be using, like poster boards, stickers, and interactive whiteboards for events, maybe social media campaigns, like what would you buy instead of textbooks? And another very important thing was faculty and institutional engagement. We really wanted to do some workshops or information sessions for faculty and educational developers, which we were able to accomplish. We'd collaborate with stakeholders at McMaster, like I mentioned earlier. And again, just a desire to kind of shift our advocacy from us as individual students to systemic change at McMaster. And the fifth thing was a very large thing for us, which was preparing for Open Education Week from March 3rd to 7th. So we did a lot of planning for our table at the Hub, which is a large building at our school with visual and interactive elements. And just preparing engaging questions for our boards at the major libraries at our school, which is the Health Sciences Library, Thode Library, and Mills Library.
So as part of our efforts to connect with students, we used whiteboards in the libraries during Open Education Week, as Rebecca discussed previously, to collect some feedback from students on whether they prefer price or quality in course materials, how they feel about the use of free open textbooks instead of traditional textbooks in coursework, and what they would spend money on if they didn't have to spend it on textbooks. We had some really incredible engagement in all three libraries using this method, and students were very enthusiastic about the prospect of OER usage instead of traditional paid-for textbooks in courses at McMaster. So additionally, for Open Education Week, we set up a table in one of our student centers, the Hub, and asked students questions about their knowledge of OER, distributed infographics and stickers, promoting accessible and affordable education, and gave students the opportunity to use the textbook calculator that was built by our team to compare the cost of different textbook prices for first-year programs at McMaster. The table was really successful, and we had a lot of positive engagement from students, probably because of where we set up the table. It was fully in our best interest to put it in a very high traffic area. And then pictured on the left is the infographic that was distributed to students and displayed in libraries. And then on the right is the textbook calculator. Both were created by students on the team. So in terms of engagement with McMaster faculty, part of our team worked on developing a guide to OER at McMaster, with the finished product being an OER itself, which is really important. Additionally, we did a presentation to the Health Sciences Education Council, and the goal of this presentation was to encourage faculty of health science members to include OER in the curricula, and this presentation was received particularly well. In terms of further McMaster community engagement, we've used presentations. The OER team members gave a presentation to McMaster libraries and the students as partners community forum. In both circumstances, outlining the efforts that we've taken to bring student voices to OER advocacy and the importance of giving students the opportunity to share their opinions and expertise. It also allowed the students giving the presentations to connect with university staff and faculty in a way that they may not have had the opportunity to otherwise. So in terms of my own experience in this position, I applied for this position because of my passion for advocacy. I'm the president of a student advocacy group on campus, a group that I started and now lead. So not only did I already understand the necessary steps to be taken to reach such a vast number of students and faculty in a meaningful way, but I also had the skills and knowledge to succeed in this role. On this team, I had the opportunity to continue to develop skills that I usually don't have the time or opportunity to use. So I created stickers for OER Week and a web page, even if it is very basic, for students to use to see how much their textbooks would have cost in first year had they purchased them, which students usually don't. And through this experience, I have learned more about the needs of my peers in other disciplines and their expectations for their learning experiences. My expectations as an engineering student are going to differ drastically from the expectations of someone in health sciences like Rebecca. Students in different faculties are typically very disconnected, especially in an academic sense. So this experience allowed me to take a peek into what their learning experiences look like and where they might struggle the most. I think that hiring upper year students was one of the best decisions made by the hiring committee. First year students are typically supported financially by their parents, and providing upper year students this opportunity gave voice to a demographic that is more likely to be transitioning into supporting themselves financially and having to make those decisions about what they're purchasing and where they need to make budget cuts to make ends meet. At this time, I don't think there's any changes I'd make to this position. I feel like this could be implemented quite successfully at other institutions. I feel like the work that we're doing is meaningful and provides a voice to students in a way that would otherwise be ignored, despite the fact that the students are the ones most impacted by inaccessible and unaffordable teaching and learning methods.
Awesome, yeah, and just reflecting on my experience in the role as well. When I first came across the opportunity to become a student OER advocate, I kind of just saw it as a natural extension of the advocacy work I was already doing across campus. With lived experience navigating barriers in education and my involvement in other equity-focused roles, I was already passionate about creating spaces and resources that are inclusive and accessible and student-informed. And I applied because I had actually helped develop an open resource textbook that was funded by the OER grant at our school and kind of saw firsthand how open educational resources could be a real lever for change. And with that, I learned that OER are not just about free textbooks, but rather about rethinking who has access to knowledge and who can create it and how we can remove some of those structural barriers that students face. During my time in this role, I was able to engage with a lot of very amazing opportunities, like, helping create that open access faculty guide to OER, which was designed to help instructors better understand how they can engage with open educational resources at McMaster. And because it is an OER, it can continue to grow and adapt with time, which I think is really fascinating. And one of the most meaningful parts of this role was the chance to engage with faculty and staff. These conversations kind of went beyond just explaining what OERs are, and they became opportunities to talk about equity and inclusion and how we can better meet the needs of us students through resources. And just what I learned really shaped the way I approach other student spaces as well. At McMaster, I worked as a resource executive with a student organization that serves as a peer support space for disabled students. It's called Maxess. And because of what I learned through my work here, I was able to transition our internal and external resources into OER and make them even more accessible, which I thought was really profound. Um, and again, just through this experience, I was able to strengthen different skills like communication and collaboration and just inclusive design skills, which are really important to me. But I think more importantly, I saw firsthand the power of students in shaping how education is shared. And I truly think partnering with students, especially with open educational resources, is just an incredible thing that any institution can do.
Okay, and then in terms of my reflections, the wonderful thing about the open education community is just how many materials are openly available for learning about OER, which I found was really useful when we were going through the early weeks of this program and helping students to learn more about open education. I found that one of the things I was constantly trying to balance was making space for the OER advocates to bring their ideas without feeling overwhelmed by not having enough structure or certainty around what they were supposed to be doing. So I didn't want them to feel like they could do anything in the world, but to try and guide them a little bit. I found that people are really, really interested in hearing student perspectives in this area. Um, we kept asking to present places and being told like, yes, absolutely, come present to us. So that was really great. And overall, this has been a really just a really fantastic experience for me. I feel like there have been so many ideas that have come out um, from the meetings we've had and the conversations we've had. And we have lots of plans of things we want to accomplish over the summer, just from all of the ideas the students have brought. And if I were to make any recommendations to folks at other institutions, I would suggest connecting with the people at your campus or at other campuses who want to help you. There are a lot of people who can be interested in this and who can support you. I know I reached out to folks at the University of Alaska Anchorage who had a student advocate program, and they were really helpful in when I was trying to build this program. Um, so yeah, reach out to people who can help. Try and start small, just get something started. I've found this has been a really great program, and it it felt like it was going to be a lot of work at the beginning, but it was easier and it was way better than I thought it could be. And so in terms of connections with information literacy and the framework, I hadn't thought about this a whole lot before thinking about this talk, but I think the frame that has been the most important is the information has value frame. We are always talking with our group and with our campus about issues related to copyright and licensing and OER and issues of access or lack thereof to educational materials and how important those issues are. And also, I think there's some links here to some other frames. But what I've learned is that I think we know student knowledge and experience are really important in these conversations about open education. And actually, like, it's really easy for us to start participating in these conversations around course materials and affordability. And people are very happy to have students included in those conversations, which is fantastic. Okay.
So in terms of next steps and plans for the future, 3 of the 4 students from the OER group in the past term have decided to continue working with the OER Advocate program throughout the summer. The 4th one didn't return, not because she didn't like it, but because she got a big person job, which is super awesome. In terms of next steps for the summer months, we're planning a campus-wide textbook affordability survey, outreach to different student groups and faculty so that curricula and learning materials can potentially be adjusted before September, developing a student toolkit for OER, and creating a student-facing page for OER LibGuide. After the summer, there are plans to hire a second cohort of advocates to continue the work and push for more student perspective.
Okay. And there's our email addresses if you want to reach out to any of us. But otherwise, thanks. We're excited to get into the Q&A and the discussion.
Yes, thank you. That was phenomenal. I learned a lot, and I am so excited to go back and look at these slides in the presentation and apply some of these methods here on my campus. I'm so inspired. I know everyone else is inspired as well. But we will go ahead and start with the Q&A. We have a few questions that were popped into the chat, and I will go back to the beginning. So for our UTA group, librarian Anthony McMillan asks, did students have an opportunity to convince faculty to use OER resources?
That's
Yeah,
a great question, and I saw that in there. I'll let Lainey, I know you're going to have some PR campaign stuff to add. That is actually something that we talk to students about regularly. Like you can tell faculty about OER. If there's like I tell students, if there's a really expensive book, you can always just let them know, hey, there might be an OER out there. So we do try to talk to them without, sending them to go like yell at the faculty. We're trying to get them to talk nicely and share the outreach, share the knowledge. Lainey, did you want to share about the PR campaign?
Yes, I think when it comes to the outreach, we do say, hey, just tell your faculty members in the exit survey that you want to know we are.
Yeah.
And that's an easy way for them to do it. When it comes to the PR course, when I talked about they created events, they were actually able to get a tabling. They were actually able to table at the staff and faculty mixer. I'm sorry. And so they were able to talk one-on-one with faculty about the benefits of OER from a student lens. And because of that, 6 new faculty members scheduled a meeting directly with Megan to talk about next steps about OER. So that's like, oh, yeah, the deliverables of that event.
There was a drawing for that. The people who signed up, they gave away Rangers tickets. So fun sporting event.
Gotta know what.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. Our next question is for our McMaster group. And actually, this is a question from Megan. Megan asked or commented, that you would love to know more about what the OER project STEAM looks like and the workflow. And I'm sure everyone is interested in that. I don't know if anybody wants to go ahead and make a comment about that or.
Yeah,
Amy?
I can answer that. So the OER project stream in our student partners program, we're really lucky that there was an existing student partners program that we could sort of tack onto that had been running for a few years. Um, and it's sort of like a typical mini grant system. They put out a call for proposals, they receive a bunch of proposals, people fill out the form, and they go through peer review, and then we select a number of grants. Happy to chat more if anybody wants to send me an email, I can tell you more about that because I don't want to get in too deep here.
Great, thank you. Okay, for McMaster again, librarian Rachel Kramer asked, is the student union at McMaster like the student government? So I think this was answered actually in the chat.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry for any confusion. They're people, student government, yeah.
So the student union, student government association, they're interchangeable here. So, okay, great. Thank you for answering that. And then Anthony McMillan had another question, and he asked, who provided the training for this process? And this is, I think, this was for McMaster as well.
Yeah. I feel like it was me, but also like the whole open education community contributed. I was sharing links and readings and videos for the group to watch. But I wasn't the creator of those things. So I was sharing, information with them, and then we would sort of discuss those when we met each week and have conversations about what we were reading. So, but I was the one compiling that information, I guess.
Yeah, and Anthony, he kind of had a follow-up comment to that in the chat, and he says, this is a great way to advocate for OER, but I worry about the same overachieving students working on every project. Was student recruitment a problem? And he goes on to say, we have a small student population at community colleges, smaller student populations as opposed to four-year institutions. So was student recruitment a problem for this project?
It really
And I'm
wasn't
for
for
everyone, I
us.
guess. Yeah, I could answer that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start because I've already unmuted myself. Sorry about that. I'll say we had a ton of applicants for our program, and lots of them were fantastic. I wish I could have hired so many people, but no, we had a lot of interest for our positions.
I did want to add, if you're concerned about not having the student recruitment for these, you can go the route of those embedded course assignments. I know we do a lot of renewable assignments through our OER programming, so that allows students forced to be involved with OER based on their grades. And hopefully through that vehicle, you'll get more engagement after they're introduced to it.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. make sure to copy that in the chat. Thank you for thank you for answering all of our questions. If you have any more comments or questions, we have a couple of minutes. You can pop them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just ask, do any of our presenters have any other additional closing remarks that you'd like to add?
I really appreciate the opportunity that you gave us to come share what we've been doing. Sometimes I feel like we're just kind of in a bubble doing what we think is best, and we don't get to talk about it as much as I'd like to, because we're just doing our thing and we forget to stop and share. So student voices are really important to us, and we're really, students are our end goal stakeholder. That's who we're working for here. And anybody can be a student, so it's really everybody. So we appreciate the chance to get to talk about what we enjoy doing.
Yeah, well said. And I have to ask, are there plans to publish your findings, or what you presented on today?
The goal, yes, is to write more. We are planning to put our presentation into our institutional repository, Mav Matrix. So that's our start, but we definitely want to write more and share more.
And also give spaces for students to become actual publishers of the work. Our students actually just got accepted to the Open Ed conference to share their experience with the OER OSAG group. So that's something y'all can look forward to seeing there.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Katie, Rachel, Kiana, do you have anything else you would like to say before I wrap up today's session? Okay, well, again, this was fantastic. Thank you to our presenters for sharing your experiences, the wonderful work you're doing with students on your campus. I'm going to take away so many strategies, and I'm so inspired by your student-centered OER advocacy campaigns. And also thank you to everyone who joined us today for your thoughtful questions and comments and your enthusiasm. And I think we all hope that you leave today with practical tools and ideas, and with a renewed sense of commitment and empowerment to engage students in OER advocacy work. And on behalf of the ACRL Student Learning and Information Literacy Committee Professional Development Team, I would like to thank you once again and remind you that the presentation and slides will be shared in a follow-up email. Thank you, everyone.